like spelling and stuff like that. So I broke down the personal narratives. There's 6 of them, and this is also on the site that was mentioned, like Mastering the Foreign Service Personal Narratives. So there's the leadership, interpersonal, communication, management, intellectual, and then substantive knowledge. So you're crafting something for each of these 6 parts, and obviously it's going to be really specific and unique to everyone. For leadership, they're looking at, you need to mention like innovation, decision making, teamwork, openness to dissent, community service, and institution building. So you should be crafting a narrative around how you have shown leadership and a position that you've held previously. And then for interpersonal skills, you're writing about professional standards, persuasion and negotiation, workplace perceptiveness, adaptability, and representational skills. For communication, your written communication, oral communication, active listening, public outreach, and then foreign language skill. And if you don't have foreign language skill, that's okay. It's not like a core requirement. It is looked at, but you don't necessarily need to have that foreign language component. And then for management skills, that would be writing about operational effectiveness, performance management, and evaluation, along with management resources and customer service. Next, there's intellectual skills. So they want to know about your information gathering and analysis, as well as your critical thinking abilities and how you are an active learner, an active leader, and in terms of management training, how you have experience with these. And then they also need to know your substantive knowledge, such as understanding U.S. history, which we talked about last week, as well as government, culture, and your application in dealing with other cultures. So how do you approach writing about a culture that maybe you're not from, but you need to understand like a conflict that's going on there or something like that. So they want to see your knowledge or application of career track information that is relevant. So these are like the 6 pillars for how your FSOs are evaluated in their roles. And these are all really important because all of these skills that they're evaluating you on, your leadership, interpersonal, communication, management, intellectual, substantive, they stay with you when you enter the Foreign Service for the duration of your career. So they're judging you on these because it's skills that you need to have to be successful long term and to have long careers in the Foreign Service. So when I was looking at some of the tips for approaching crafting your personal narratives, it sounds obvious, but make sure you're answering the question. Sometimes it can be really easy to get a prompt and write about it in a roundabout way or craft a really long answer, and then maybe when you're like proofreading, you kind of realize that you didn't fully answer the question, or maybe you went off on a random tangent, which can be okay writing about other things. But when it's on an evaluation such as this, you need to make sure that you're being really specific and direct and clear, which is why when we're doing like rough drafts, that's why it's really encouraged for people to have others review their work, so that way your message is getting across clearly and you're not just kind of getting lost in the narrative or lost in explaining like superfluous things that don't really relate to the question. So just directly answering the question, staying on a clear path will really help get you to that end goal of having a good, solid response. And in our responses, we need to be making sure that we're clearly showing how our skills and interest and current experience, whatever we've had, how they match with our career track that we've selected. So there's a few different career tracks. I think we talked about those last week and like 2 weeks ago. And one thing I kind of thought about was like, if anyone's currently having a really hard time showing how your skills and interest or experience match a certain track, maybe you just need to like go back and evaluate and maybe pick another track or approach it with a different mindset if you're having trouble like forming how to answer some of the questions, just because there does need to be a clear path that you can draw in your writing. So if you're having trouble making that connection, it might be time to like go back to the drawing board and think of maybe another career track in the Foreign Service that might better align with your skills and everything.
Quick
And
question.
so, yeah.
Um, so, and also, if anyone else has a question, you can put it in the chat or raise your hand, and I will um, cue Britton so you can get your question
Yeah.
in as well. And welcome to those who have joined. I think another 10 people have joined, so thank you for joining tonight.
Okay.
Um, so, just as you can see, we're going over personal narratives, writing, and essays, different ways to improve here. This is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of people have when it comes to the Foreign Service, or more so the testing portion of it. My question for you, Britton, is because I keep hearing it in different ways and different. So is it 1,300 characters total for all 6 narratives, or is it 1,300 characters for just like each narrative?
I haven't taken it, so I keep hearing 1,300 total, but I'm not positive. If anyone else knows, like, please feel free to jump in because I don't want to give the wrong information. So if anyone knows, like,
it is 1,300, yes.
Total.
Yeah.
For each question.
Here, we got a queue. Let's start with Merche, and then we're gonna go with Rustam, and then DL.
Okay.
No, I was saying it's 1,300 per question.
Okay.
Not total. Yeah.
Per question.
Okay, that's good. That gives us more room to
Rustam,
answer everything.
was that your answer? Was that what you were going to say as well, Rustam?
Yeah, I was going to mention that it's per question.
Okay. Appreciate it. And DL, was that also what you were going to say, or?
Oh yeah, and definitely, and that's including spaces. So be careful.
So each individual character, 1,300 total, each. Yeah.
Okay.
For the next couple weeks, homework. If you want to be brave and share your personal narrative the way I did on our first call, please do share in the group chat, and I will read it. Others will read it, provide feedback, and if it's okay with you, if it's not okay, it's okay as well. I will share it in a couple weeks as well in the class. So, Britt.
Thanks. Yeah, the space thing is kind of tricky. And when I heard about the spaces being counted, that can obviously detract a lot. So when we're crafting our drafts, it'll be important to like keep track of how many spaces you have and stuff too, because we do those without even realizing when we're writing. So that's kind of like a tricky technicality. But yeah, so moving on, just you want to make sure that you're being direct. We only have a certain amount of words. Some people are more direct writers than others. So if you're already a direct writer, then the word limit shouldn't be a problem. But if you're someone who is kind of more wordy or superfluous in your writing skills, then that word count might be an issue. So it's just important to make sure you're using the strongest words possible and not having a lot of unnecessary nouns or adverbs when you're describing your skills. They really want you to be direct and to the point. Additionally, you need to clearly show how your skills and experience and interest match with the career track you've selected. That should be pretty explicit. If you're going back and reading your narratives and seeing that there's a disconnect somewhere, you might need to change the narrative a little bit, or maybe pick a different story or example that better highlights your skills. And also, especially in the early stages, you can always like ask the people who know you best, like what their opinion is. Maybe if you were like kind of stuck on a time when you showed leadership, or maybe a time when you were really communicative. If you have people around you that you could talk to and ask, sometimes we get in our own heads and it's hard to think of examples. So if you could turn to like colleagues or family or friends to help you, just in generating some ideas for examples that speak to your character and stuff like that. I found that to be really helpful just to get the writing process kind of started if you're stuck. So, additionally, in doing research, a lot of the sources I saw mentioned that you, as a Foreign Service officer, you really need to strike a balance of being assertive, humble, and then intellectually curious. So obviously when we're writing about ourselves, it might seem like we're being a little self-promoting or maybe like arrogant or something, but they do need to know what our history is and what we've done. And there is a way to write about that, like in an assertive and direct manner, while also being humble and just highlighting your accomplishments and why you think you're a good match for the Foreign Service. So then moving on to the framework for structuring and presenting your experiences. This is listed on the website for mastering the FSO personal narratives. The framework is called STAR-L. It's just an acronym. So that means situation, task, action, result, learning. First, you would set the scene by describing the context or background of your story. So maybe if you're writing about a time where you showed leadership, you would first have to pick a good example that speaks to your leadership skills. Then you would move on to task, where you outline the specific challenge or problem you faced. This highlights the purpose of your goal and goal of your story, providing a clear objective to follow. Next, you would get into the action, where you explain your steps or your decisions that you use to address the task. And this would demonstrate your approach and your skills in dealing with the situation. Then you would write about the results and share the actions or outcomes, emphasizing the impact and positive change you made. This provides tangible evidence of your accomplishments. Finally, you would conclude the writing by reflecting on the experience, sharing lessons you learned, how they shaped your personal or professional growth, and then how these lessons connect to your career track. And this can be applied to every narrative that you have to write about, so leadership and all the others. If you approach it with this framework, it can help you get your essay going and set the scene. It forces you to think about what you actually did, how you challenge or how you met the challenge that was put in front of you, the actions that you took, and then what happened as a result of the actions you took, ending with what you learned from the experience. So for implementing the STAR-L framework, to effectively implement the framework in your writing, it's really important that you brainstorm the experiences that would show your abilities or demonstrate personal growth, and then identifying the critical components of each story. So if you have an example in your head, which I'm sure we all have several examples, and maybe you're thinking like, maybe you're stuck between an example of what to write about and you don't know which example would be stronger, just try and apply this framework and see how you can outline the situation, the task, the action, the result, and the learning. And then once you break it down into these ultimately 5 components, then you can see whether or not that's a strong example to use. And so then you can organize your thoughts more accordingly. And then also just remembering to choose stories that align with your selected career track. So even if like you have an amazing story that you really want to use, if you're having a hard time connecting it to the career track, you might need to choose a different story. And so from there, then that's when you would do the drafting once you have your framework, and then editing a lot, editing. I know, for example, like it's not the exact same, but I had to write a personal narrative for my current role as a Fulbright English teaching assistant. And for my personal narrative, I remember I like met with an advisor and I had to have like 5 different rough drafts. So it's okay to revise. Even if you think that your first draft is great, it probably is, but it's always important to have like to give yourself some time to step away from the writing and then return to it later with a different mindset or more time. And something that you wrote today that you might think was amazing might not seem as amazing in a week or two. So the earlier you start thinking about the narratives, the easier it will be to kind of get started and then edit them. And then asking for feedback can be scary. I know it's not always fun to ask others like for feedback. It kind of puts us in a vulnerable position to have others read our work, but it is important to get feedback from someone other than yourself, because we all have like undiagnosed biases that we probably have when it comes to evaluating our own writing. So just asking for feedback from others, whether that's a friend, a sibling, a peer, someone who knows you is good. If it's someone who doesn't know you as well, that's good too, just because when people read your narratives, like when you submit these narratives, the people evaluating them don't know you. So if you have someone that you trust, but maybe they don't know you that well, that could be a good person to ask for feedback, just because it puts like a distance between the reader and you, the writer. And that's a distance that also exists when your narratives are being evaluated by actual people at the State Department. So it's nice to have people that you know, but also like don't be afraid to ask someone who you don't know really well, but someone who you still trust who could maybe read it for you. And then these are just some other tips that I compiled from various sources that I linked, and then also from like foreign service officers that I've talked to. So answering the question, if you're asked to write about how you've shown leadership, don't write about your boss or don't write about something that's not explicitly related. Don't just note what you did, but you also would need to explain how you did it, why it mattered, and what effect it had. And then you don't need like a grand story or a grand narrative to answer the prompts. It doesn't have to be something groundbreaking. Obviously, like we're all coming from different career paths, so not everyone is gonna have like a crazy story about running into a fire or brokering world peace or something that's like really similar to current roles in the State Department, but it's important to make sure that the story is personal to you and shows your strengths. Additionally, you don't want to like embellish or kind of overhype the narrative, but you also want to make sure that you're like correctly portraying your accomplishments. So the narratives aren't really a time to be like humble, obviously, or modest. Obviously, you need like you can write in a humble way, but they do need to know what you did. So don't like downplay any accomplishments that you've had. Make sure you're writing about them like proudly, but without sounding arrogant. And then getting feedback, editing, condensing, and then repeating that process until you're happy with the final result. And then for the stories, you just need to focus on stories that demonstrate the required skills and align with your chosen track. So like I said earlier, if there is a disconnect that you see between your stories and your chosen track, maybe you need to pick a different story, or maybe you need to pick a different track, because there are several tracks in the Foreign Service. Additionally, looking for experiences that showcase your adaptability, your ability to work in diverse environments, and personal growth are all really good examples, because that's key characteristics that they look for in Foreign Service officers. They want people who are adaptable, able to work in diverse environments, and open to personal growth. These are all things that would make you a really successful Foreign Service candidate. And then finally, you need to use formal language, a professional tone, and an active voice. An active voice is just giving action to the verb, so it's not like passive. You're just like actively writing what you did. And then finally, for conclusion of everything I just went over, because it was kind of a lot, but there's the 6 pillars, which are leadership, interpersonal, communication, management, intellectual, and then substantive knowledge. So those are the 6 pillars. And then for breaking down the narratives, you can apply STAR L, situation, task, action, result, learning. So that's the conclusion. I'll share this doc. It's about a little over 2 pages of notes. And then I have sources linked at the bottom. So there were a few videos that were helpful, and then that website that we've mentioned before has been really helpful. So I'm gonna stop sharing, but I will share the doc, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. I know that that's like a lot of information, and obviously everyone has a different writing style and stuff, so there's going to be different ways that we all craft our own narratives, but there is that formula that we can all use to make sure we have a clear outline. So if y'all have any questions, I hope that that was clear enough.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was definitely really good.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, I tried to condense it because there's a lot of info out there, but I didn't want to put too much because then I didn't want the important stuff to get lost. But I think just like knowing the 6 pillars and knowing that method that they mentioned, I think if we all approach it that way, it's kind of like a guide map, and then what other problems come up, we can address them later. But starting with that, I think is a get the ball rolling writing, since writing is such a hard process. Personally, I don't consider myself like a naturally strong writer. It's something that I've had to work on, but I do know like the more you write and the more you practice, obviously, the stronger your writing can get. And then it's also a skill that you need to keep crafting if you want to keep your writing at a certain level. So it can be hard to get back into it, but like once you redevelop the steps and get a few drafts going,
for sure,
you can get back in the groove.
Could you share the star L on screen?
Yeah, I'll share that.
I'm gonna put out a little challenge for tonight.
Okay.
If anyone's interested in using the star L method to just,
yeah,
we learned.
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Well,
Yeah.
we learned from Britton, in theory how to use it, but if anyone would like to in real time tell us about your day, or tell us about what you made for breakfast this morning using the star L method, if you can, and really you can tell us anything. And just to review, the star L framework is situation. Set the scene by describing the context or background of your story. The task, outlining the specific challenge or problem you faced. This highlights the purpose of the goal of the story, providing a clear objective to follow. Action. Explain your steps of your decision to address the task. This demonstrates your approach and skills in dealing with the situation. And the end result. Share your actions outcome, and emphasizing the impact. I'm not expecting anyone to just rush into this. Take a moment, take a minute. We have time. Just take a minute and think about if you were to try to frame making breakfast this morning, going to go run an errand, preparing for a test, if anybody's taking exams this upcoming week. Wink to those who know exactly what I'm talking about there. Any scenario. Getting your getting your 1-year-old ready for church while she fights tooth and nail to not put clothes on because she prefers just to run around in a diaper. Any type of scenario. In about 20 seconds, I'll look for someone to respond there. And this is good for job interviews too. This is a really great way to describe, tell me about a time you had to collaborate with another department to accomplish a goal. Tell me about a challenging time that you faced with a difficult manager. These are all real real interview questions, real scenarios. Okay, 20 seconds. Anybody? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, we have Melissa. I saw your hand raised. Any scenario you want using the STAR method.
I'm looking at the framework here. Thanks, Britton, for posting it. In the chat, the scene this is actually something I want to use as one of my narratives, but this is not a concise summarization of it. I am an organizer of Silent Book Club here in Buenos Aires, where I live. And it has done surprisingly well. And now I did not pay attention to how many people had signed up. And now I have too many. And I cannot find a space that will keep it free and fit all of us, which is about 30 and another 15 or so on a wait list. So this morning I was at brunch in a new space, and I wanted to know if this owner would consider accepting us as a group. I was with a friend who speaks Spanish. His Spanish is considerably more fluent. So I had to communicate with the owner, but he would refuse to help me. So I would speak more Spanish, which is another issue. But I spoke with the owner, described our situation with poor language skills, described the background of the club because it's quite unusual here. No one has ever heard of it before, and inquired if he might consider hosting us. He came back with some very bad English. I complimented him, and in the end, he said he would host us, even though there are not enough seats for everyone. In reflection of my learning, the importance of just giving it a go, assuming best intentions, and realizing there is no perfect, but that coming close can be quite successful as well. That's my random few seconds.
I was following it the entire time. I was checking off. Well, she was following it right through. That was really good. That was really good. The situation was set. The background, the story, the task, which is the challenge of how you were going to face it, and what the big thing was. You really showed your skills there, and how you were able to still accomplish and get the space, and your learning outcome.
Let's see. Work in progress.
And that's what we're doing. This is a work in progress. It's not about perfection. It's about progress. This is what we're doing here in this session. So let's give it up for Melissa. That was very brave, and it was a very real scenario. So we have DL on deck. DL is raising his hand.
Actually, I was just trying to clap.
Oh, well, tell us about your situation with clicking the wrong button using the STAR L method.
Oh, let me pull it back up. Actually, about to go back and start writing a project that I was working on. Where'd it go? Give me 1 sec.
Okay.
Board. I'm operating this via my phone. I apologize.
It's okay. We're here to support.
Outstanding. Come on. No. Oh, goodness gracious. I'll lose it. There it is. Okay. Structuring. Okay. All right. So, what we're dealing with here is a situation of miscalculation and accidental button pressing.
Okay.
I've accidentally pressed this button due to the fact that I was attempting to congratulate her on her presentation and managed to have big thumbs, and my thumbs are all over the place. So I hit the wrong button. Uh, After which I had planned on going back to continue working on a project that I was working on, which is due in the next couple of days. I didn't realize that the buttons were so sensitive in this application. And it just happened to sync up with the exact moment that that someone was requested to make this next presentation. I am, however, quite pleased with the opportunity to have been allowed to make an attempt at making a presentation, because otherwise I probably would not have volunteered.
And the learning?
The learning, I have learned that pressing buttons can be extremely tricky, and if you're not careful with your actions, you can end up in places you did not intend.
Hey, you checked off the boxes though, so good. I was following. I was following along. I was like, yeah, but you brought it home. Definitely appreciate you for taking that brave step. You may not have intended to be here, but you showed up and showed out. Definitely appreciate you. Melissa, did you raise your hand second time?
I did. Is there a spot where all the documents are like a folder or something that I feel like there was and I can't remember where it is?
Not a folder per se, but there is. I need to create a place where all of the documents are, because right now, in two places. One, in the chat, also in the Google meeting. So if you actually click in the meeting notes, I have links to different things there. But it would make more sense for there to be a more centralized place. So yeah, I found a way to just make a doc, share it, and not a doc, but a folder, and share that with everyone in the groups. Because I'm in maybe 8 groups, all within in the chat. So yeah, I'll share it. I appreciate it. I'll do that here this week.
Thanks, that's great.
For sure.
I really appreciate your organization, Travis, truly. I think this could totally be one of your narratives.
You think so? My wife, she goes, yeah, so how you like your new job? I'm like, I haven't been sworn in yet, but I think I'm getting some practice in facilitating these meetings. So I think the next step would be the United Nations. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thank you all for allowing me to do this. I didn't initiate it, but I mean, much like DL, it's where I am now, and now the learning outcome is I actually do enjoy it. So, and I get to be who I naturally am, which is someone who helps and shares resources. So, being in Athena, being in human resources for so long, it's just natural, just a hand in the glove, and you just kind of step right into a role that you didn't necessarily plan to, but it happens like that. So thank you, Melissa. And thank you everyone who showed up today. I mean, we're a few minutes short. I'm not going to try to hijack and keep, for the next 8 minutes, but definitely appreciate everyone who showed up. We got some new faces tonight. We hope that you come next week. First, want to give Britton another round of applause. We are so grateful that you took time, and also shout out to Athena because she did the last session, which was amazing. U.S. history from here in my 30s taking a U.S. history class. I'm just like, wow. And it made me realize how much I don't know about my own country. So I need to definitely do that if I'm going to be representing the country and selling it to other countries. So with that being said, we have our next session coming up, and we are going to be looking for someone to facilitate using your strengths, or even focusing on something that you want to learn more about, and you share what you've learned. The next session is the 31st of March.